Hello everyone, I hope you're well out there and thank you for tuning in to our Piktochart series. My name is Wilson and I'll be your host for today's Piktochart. If this is your first time listening to us, Piktochart is a series of chats with leaders and entrepreneurs who share their knowledge and experience in using Piktochart. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Karin Rex, an instructional designer and e-learning developer with more than 25 years of experience. Karin is a professional facilitator specializing in virtual classroom delivery, as well as an instructional designer and developer focusing on e-learning and virtual classroom designs. Karin has been using Piktochart since 2016, and I'm excited to be speaking with her today. Hello Karin, and welcome to our Piktochart. How are you doing over there?
I'm doing great. How are you today, Wilson?
I'm doing good, and I'm so excited to be speaking with you today and also having you here in our Piktochart. So before we begin, I'm sure our audience would love to know you better. Would you like to introduce yourself further? Let us know how you got started in your professional career and what led to your current role.
Well, you did such a nice job with my introduction. I don't know what's left to say, but since 1989, I've owned a company called geekygirl. I named it geekygirl because I love tools. I love technology and I just adore trying different things. So my company is a boutique learning company based in the Philadelphia area. I spend a lot of time writing, that's my wheelhouse, and designing, as you said, all sorts of synchronous and asynchronous learning experiences. I also coach people on how to design for and how to facilitate in the virtual classroom because I've really found my home in the virtual classroom. And in addition to Piktochart, which as you mentioned, I've been using since 2016, I also use a whole bunch of other learning authoring tools like Captivate and Storyline, Rise, Camtasia, VideoScribe, Powtoons, and even Lectora. So I really enjoy what I do. I'm never bored.
That's so encouraging to hear. And I think also with what has happened in the past few years with the pandemic, you've also seen a rise in the need for virtual classroom. Is that correct?
Yes, mine is one of the few businesses that did not flounder at all. I have been consistently busy since the beginning of the pandemic, even now, through now.
Yeah, that's so encouraging to hear and well done to you. Well, thank you for giving us a better insight into your journey. So I'm excited to get our conversation going and I'm curious to know first, how did you first discover Piktochart?
I don't quite remember specifically where I found it. But I know it was sometime in 2015, 2016. It's hard to believe that's 7 years already. But one of my instructional design clients, InSync Training, was doing a whole bunch of free 1-hour webinars, and they wanted to offer each of their speakers a personalized infographic to provide with their speaking sessions. So that's how I got started. I was making these bespoke infographics for each of the speakers. Those were my first official infographic projects. I still have many of them on my dashboard.
Wow. And so were you like looking for an infographic tool and then you stumbled across Piktochart? Is that how it happened?
I imagine that's how it happened, and it clicked with me instantly. And I tried several. There were a couple out there at the time, but for some reason Piktochart, first of all, your support was outstanding, and whenever I had a question, I was answered like within 24 hours, which is amazing, Wilson. So even from the beginning, the enthusiasm for the tool and the support that it provided was great. And I also found that, like this conversation, Piktochart wanted to hear what I thought of it. They consistently, you guys asked me, what do I like? What do I wish for? I had been wishing for that alignment tool for years, and then finally we got it. It was great. So it was small things like that that really made me very specifically a Piktochart fan.
Thank you so much for saying those kind words, and it's really encouraging for us, especially in our team as well, because we try to be as user focused as we can, and it's why we get on calls to hear from our users, getting their feedback, and of course trying to continue to improve the product as well. So thank you for supporting us relentlessly since 2016. And can you let us know as well, because in your role that you mentioned about you designing and developing e-learning courses, can you let us know why is visual communication so important for your role as an instructional designer?
Oh, sure. I have no formal graphic design training. I've been in the field for 30 years, but I have no formal graphic design training. I was a typesetter back in the 80s. I've been in the learning and development field for 20 years. Over that time, I believe the aesthetics of good design rubbed off on me. And I think my clients have responded very positively to my designs. But true talent development professionals really need to understand that training is not the solution to every performance problem. Sometimes it takes a much simpler tool like a checklist or an infographic. And what I find with Piktochart, it helps with the aesthetics. It helps me look like I have some sort of graphic design background. It makes what I create look good. That's what I needed. And it was a perfect tool at the perfect time for me.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning it about like sometimes it's also like having this checklist or infographics, because I think with design, you can communicate the message more clearly than just reading, a long page of some instructions on how do you do certain things. Is that correct? Is that in your experience as well?
It is. And I mean, you've consistently added new categories too. I mean, I think in the beginning it was just infographics and maybe presentations, but then you added reports, and then you added posters and social media sizing and things like that. So that really can help someone like me who has a sense of design but is not a designer to make beautiful things.
Yeah, and we're so glad to know that Piktochart has been helpful for you as well. I think in a lot of the users that I speak with, not everyone has a professional graphic design experience. And so we recognize that as well, and we try to make sure that our tool is as easy as it can. Whether you are a super experienced designer or you're a beginner, you have no experience, it should be intuitive for you to be able to use it. So thank you for sharing that. Now you've been using Piktochart since 2016. So perhaps you could share a little bit about how has visual communication or Piktochart in general has benefited your company or your career.
It helps make me look good. Makes me look good to my clients. And I think I mentioned this to you before, but I actually teach Piktochart too. There's been a few opportunities where I've had a small audience and gotten them together to learn how to create Piktochart. Matter of fact, one of the courses that I wrote for ATD, which is the Association for Talent Development, it's one of the largest organizations in the field. I do a course called Writing for Learning, and it's a 5-week, 3-hour session, so it's 18 hours or more of learning. And in one of the sections, I actually bring them into Piktochart and show them how to create a simple step-by-step set of instructions using all the bells and whistles that you can imagine. And I think people really like that.
Yeah, wow, that's just an awesome initiative that you started. And you've mentioned about you creating a lot of visuals in Piktochart. You've also taught people how to use Piktochart. Now, if you could narrow it down to one of like your most proudest creation or the most successful creation in Piktochart, what would that be?
You're gonna laugh, Wilson. My personal favorite infographic that I've ever created is one that the client rejected. I'm not joking. I was just speaking to you about that Writing for Instructional Design and Training certificate program that I created for the Association for Talent Development, ATD. So I had recently read Stephen King's book on writing. Stephen King is one of the best American writers in the world. I have nothing but admiration for him. I'm not necessarily a fan of the horror genre, but I love his writing, and his book on writing was very instructive for me. So then I developed this writing course for ATD, and I sort of was asked to create an infographic that they would send out to help market the class. And what I created was something, I'm going to show it to you.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
So the reason why I love this one is because I really went sort of crazy on the gore factor. And I made this feel pretty Stephen King-ish. So I created this really super fun infographic to market my writing course. And I did it in very eerie shades of gray and black. I used spooky characters in shadows. I even had a bit of blood thrown in.
Yep.
Well, the client rejected it as being too scary.
But it is very Stephen King.
It is very Stephen King, and that's what I loved about it. I mean, for me, seeing this, these are all quotes that come from Stephen King too, and that came from his writing book. And they're things that I actually teach in the course. So like I even had this Write Fearlessly checklist, right? So this is all, I love this one because of the simplicity and the theme. And I can't believe the client wouldn't let me use it. So you know what I do? Now when I teach the class, I show everybody this infographic and let them know that sometimes you can love your own creation so much, but it doesn't mean that you throw it out. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorites. Another one of my favorites is this series that I did for a design class. And what this is, I teach a lot of visual communication tips in my writing and my design classes. And I teach them something called RAP-W, which stands for white space, repetition, alignment, proximity, and wording. So white space, repetition, alignment, proximity, and wording are very important visual communication tips. So I teach about the importance of using a lot of white space, which is called sometimes negative space, and how white space can have a really positive impact on your learners, right? On your visuals. That I teach that using repetitive design elements throughout a document really adds sort of a sense of cohesiveness and continuity to a document. Proper alignment, that's the A, that helps convey order and harmony to a page. And proximity lets you create kind of a level of emphasis because proximity is about grouping together like items. And then that final W in RAP-W is for writing and more importantly, editing yourself. So what you're seeing on this screen are infographics that I deliberately created that are not using the proper alignment, the proper wording, the proper repetition. So when you look at, for example, this one has poor alignment. You can see that things are not lined up the way that they should be. This typically will make a learner, when you look at this, it'll make people feel a little bit unnerved. They don't like it, right? So this is using poor alignment. Then I show them what it looks like with things aligned.
Nice.
So this is a whole series. It's the same infographic over and over again, but with different problems, right?
Yeah.
This one has too many words. This is like ridiculous. You would never want to have this many words in an infographic. And then of course I show them, here's one without repetition. You know, the backgrounds are different. I'm not using consistent fonts. I'm using silly designs throughout it.
Yeah.
Right? It looks terrible. And then of course I show them the one that is the best, that looks aligned, that is using RAP-W. So there's plenty of white space, there's repetition in the design, everything's aligned the way I want it to. I've grouped items together so the proximity's in there, and I've narrowed down the words. So this is another best for me. I really like these.
Yeah, and I like how you have created like different examples showing people what not to do and what looks the best. I know that you mentioned that you do not have any graphic design experience, but I think the RAP-W is such a great key things that in fact, I think our designers will really appreciate it because we also teach that, but whatever you say, just encapsulate kind of all the design elements that we also teach to our users. So thank you so much for sharing that, and I think you're doing such a wonderful job with the designs that you've shown us here.
Well, thanks. I'm happy to have shown it to you.
So let's move on to the next question. Thank you for sharing the creation that you've done with Piktochart. Now, as someone who's actively using Piktochart, and I think you shared a bit about the tips that you mentioned just now, but if you could offer perhaps like the most important visual communication tips for instructional designers, what would that be?
Editing your writing is key to the success of any infographic. Your wording needs to be tightly written. It's not going to be your first draft. Sometimes it will take me 16 drafts of something to get the wording to be exactly the way I want it to be. I think that 99% of good writing is editing, and you need to take the time. I also provide a system for self-editing. in my writing class that has people looking at things like, are you using any unnecessary filler phrases? Are you using huge, complicated words when simple wording will do? Small things like that can really impact a successful design in Piktochart. So edit yourself.
And finally, to wrap up, would you mind sharing with us what is your favorite feature about Piktochart?
You know, there's two things that I love about it. I love that you provide monographics that can then be colored to match my design and match my client's color palette. Those are hugely important to me. And I think I mentioned this before, the alignment tool, probably my favorite. Just the fact that I can, position one item on one side and the other on the other and have it horizontally spread or vertically spread, that I can align tops of things. When that came out, that really made my job a lot easier, because prior to the alignment tool, I was doing things like drawing boxes or lines and moving them and making sure that everything was lined up, so it took a lot of time. So I really was happy when that tool came out. That's probably my favorite.
Yeah, I love hearing that, and always encouraging to hear like the features that we release have been helpful. It's also something that you are looking for, and in fact we received a lot of feedback for the alignment tool, and that's why we decided to work on it and also have improved it along the way. So thank you so much for being patient with us as well, and now we're glad that the tool is helpful for you. Well, it was truly a pleasure to be speaking with you today, Karin. Thank you for sharing your story with us and also showing your design with us in this Piktochart. We're grateful for you for being an advocate of Piktochart and visual communication. So if we have some listeners who'd like to stay connected with you, how can they do that?
I'm on LinkedIn. Just look for Karin with an I, Karin Rex. Or you can visit my website, www.karinrex.com.
Nice. And we'll be sure to also leave that in the show notes so that you can stay connected with Karin on LinkedIn and also check out her website.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and if you enjoyed this episode, feel free to check out the rest of our Piktochart episodes. We have many more inspiring stories from different leaders and entrepreneurs out there. And that's the end of our Piktochart today, and goodbye.
Thanks for making me feel like part of the family, Wilson.